Hey, welcome back to the table today. It is Kayla and my trusty little sidekick, Collins. It has been a long summer of not a lot of YouTube making, but we are back at it. Culinary starts back here in just a couple weeks, and tonight, Collins and I are doing a lot of prep work for some homemade pasta that we are making for friends this week. So we're gonna show you a little bit of how we make pasta around here, give you some tips, tricks, and have some fun along the way. What do you think, Collins? You ready to cook? All right, we'll take that as a yes. So we're gonna get started with our mise en place. If you're not familiar with mise en place, it's a French term used in the culinary world that means everything in its place. The idea of everything in its place means when you are ready to make or assemble or use different modalities such as the stove versus your tabletop, you have everything pre-measured, ready to go, and nothing is waiting for you. So Colin's mise en place here is just flour and whisk. She's gonna be quite entertained while we go through this. What you'll need for homemade pasta dough. This is my go-to pasta dough that I can adapt and change as I'm making different types of pasta. This is gonna be great for lasagna, raviolis, spaghettis, that kind of stuff. First up and foremost for tools is a bench scraper. This is really important, especially if you're making big batches. We're gonna use a whisk at some point in time, but my sous chef has that going. I use a kitchen scale literally for everything that I do. It's really worth the $10 investment to have this if you want your recipes to turn out great every single time. This is just a fun tool for Collins. We're actually not gonna be using it tonight. Uh-oh, there you go. There you go, chef. And now for mise en place, this recipe calls for 4 eggs or 200 grams. Give or take. An average large egg weighs 50 grams. So I've got 4 here. It weighed right at 200 grams. If you have a little bit less than that, you can add more egg yolk. If you need to take some away, you can remove the egg white. We've got 5 grams of salt that I've already pre-measured, 400 grams of 00 flour. You could also use all-purpose flour. I really like this super fine flour for this recipe. And then I've got a bowl of extra flour here that we'll use as we lay out the pasta dough, just so it's not sticking to any of our surfaces. So as you can see, it's actually really super simple, not a lot of ingredients. The mixing and the letting it rest is the most important part, so we'll get into that next. So first things first, Collins is already showing us. We want to flour our surface. But before that, a couple tips I'd like to give you. Make sure that you're sanitizing your surface. We're making food for other people, so we did a deep dive sanitization here. Next, you wanna make sure when you're making pasta, you remove all of your jewelry. I have made far too many pasta batches with my rings on, with my Apple Watch, and it never fails. I'm always digging crusty pasta dough out of my jewelry. So just take it off, easy peasy. First, we're gonna get started with our 400 grams of flour. I'm just gonna dump that right on my surface. We're gonna make what's called a well, which is a big hole that we're gonna dump our eggs into. I like to use my bowl to make that well nice and big. You don't have to do that. You can easily do it with your hands. There's really no right or wrong way. Just something that I've learned as I make pasta that's helpful for me. Do you need some more? Do you need some more flour for your well? Here you go. All right, we'll get that bowl out of the way. And then I'm going to add my 4 eggs or 200 grams of eggs right into the middle. This is where it's gonna get a little bit messy. I'm gonna do a couple pinches of salt. You can add the salt at any point in time before it rests. So you can't make your dough and then add in the salt, but you can say mix a little bit, add salt as you go. I like to add it as we go. I like to break up my eggs. What do you think, Collins? So the name of the game here, and as you can see, Collins is really taking interest. We are not gonna stop swirling. I've got my egg yolks all mixed up. Great job, sis. And we are slowly pulling in pieces of flour from our well and incorporating that as much as possible. I took a pasta class, I don't know, it's probably been a year or so ago. And one thing I learned is that you want to try not to break the well until all of your egg has flour in it. And what I mean by that is fully incorporated. You're gonna get runny egg everywhere. It's gonna be an absolute mess. So the key is to use your whisk or your dough hook or whatever you may be doing and just slowly pull that into the middle and keep stirring. You could do this in a KitchenAid. However, when you're working with flour, the more you work your flour, the more gluten that develops. It's really hard to control that when you're using a KitchenAid rather than doing it by hand. So I prefer the old school traditional method of just doing it by hand. I can keep an eye on my flour, make sure it's not getting overworked and not too tough. So as you can see here, I've gotten to the point where all of my egg is now incorporated with flour. It's not runny. If I break a well, it's not going to start running all over the kitchen counter. It's starting to form somewhat of a dough. So at this point, I'm going to bring in all the sides of the well, mix that into the middle, and then you begin the messy part where you start mixing by hand. Now this is where mise en place comes in handy. My hands haven't gotten messy yet. My salt is already measured out. This is the last step before I'm going to go ahead and mix everything together. Now this is the point where you're gonna wanna grab your bench scraper, get everything kind of cleaned up a little bit into one consolidated pile. Should have worn an apron. You're probably gonna get flour everywhere. That's all right, that's part of the fun, right, Collins? As she's dumping flour on the ground. That's all right. So we're just mixing, we're combining, we're making sure that we don't see any type of yellow egg. Everything is gonna be a nice, kind of creamy white color until we get our total dough ball formed. So you're gonna mix. This process usually takes anywhere from 3 to 4 minutes. You just wanna make sure that all of that flour is touching that egg. So by now your kitchen counter is a mess, and that's perfect. We're to the point where every single part of our egg is combined with flour, and I'm just now working the dough. So as you can see, I'm pushing the dough away, shaping, pulling back in. This allows you to develop some type of gluten strength, but we're not overworking the dough. So again, I'm pushing away. If you're a bread maker, you're probably already used to this. You're combining, getting in loose pieces, rolling, pushing back. We're gonna do this a few times until all of our flour combines and we get a nice, smooth dough ball. Again, this process will probably take 3 to 4 minutes. What do you think, Collins? So I've got my dough ball here. I'll give you a close-up look. It's gonna be a nice, kind of light yellow, creamy color. When I push into it, it springs back out. Nothing is sticking. All of my flour is combined. That is the perfect combination. Again, my tried and true recipe is gonna be 400 grams of flour. You can use 00 like me. You can buy that at your Italian market. You can buy it on Amazon. A lot of grocery stores carry it in the Italian food section, or you could also use all-purpose. It's just not as fine, not as easy to combine. You're gonna use 4 eggs or 200 grams of eggs. I'd really recommend measuring those eggs out. If you want a brighter yellow pasta, use farm fresh eggs. That'll give you a nice, dense, rich yellow color. And then 5 or so grams of salt, a big hefty pinch. You wanna make sure that you salt your dough when you're making it, but also that pasta water, it's super important. Now that my dough is ready to go, I am actually gonna wrap this up in plastic wrap. The important thing when making homemade pasta and letting it rest for more than 30 minutes, so you wanna make sure that it's incredibly airtight. So I'm wrapping this up tightly in plastic wrap, and then I'll Ziploc bag it and put it in my refrigerator. We wanna make sure that the pasta is in a place where it's not able to oxidize. So I'm doing that in 2 ways, by wrapping it in airtight plastic a couple of times and then also putting it in the refrigerator. If your pasta begins to oxidize, you'll know because it will start to darken in color, it'll start to turn black, and then it's not good, not safe to eat. So that's the important thing to know when making egg pasta. Someday later down the road, I'll teach you how to make semolina pasta, which doesn't require any eggs, and that's the traditional old school way of making dried pasta. It's a lot of fun, not as messy, but I don't think it's as tasty. So we've got our pasta ready to go. Come back tomorrow. I'll show you how we build our homemade lasagna. The sauce is a 4-hour sauce. It's absolutely incredible, packed full of different vegetables, different spices. It is amazing. Definitely one you should try making at home. Thanks for joining Collins and I on the table today. She had to run to her next gig, but she'll see you next time.